this is Carolyn Stewart with InspirED Me, and joining me today is Danielle Reed from Coach on the Go. We're talking again about what inspires you. So my first question for you, Danielle, is if you can please tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what inspires you.
All right, so a little bit about myself. I'm first and foremost a mom and a wife. I was a teacher and a learning support facilitator in schools for 17 years. And about 8 years ago, I guess I had like a little bit of a wake-up call, just to sort of, things didn't feel so great. So I wanted to sort of step back and say, is my life, is how I'm showing up aligned with who I truly want to be? And I had young kids at the time, and I think the best way I described my life at the time was sort of like a game of whack-a-mole. You know, like in that fair where you hit the mole and the other one pops up, and I felt like everything I did was about hitting the next mole instead of just celebrating where I was at in that moment. So
problems that were popping up? Or
yeah, no, more like, so let's say I started out as a teacher.
Yeah.
And whack that mole and up would pop. Well, if you can do that, then maybe you should be a learning support facilitator. And so whack that mole and up pop. Well, maybe you should be a vice principal. And same thing, you know, I started running in my 20s, and it was the same kind of thing. Run a 5K, whack, then the 10K, then the half marathon, then the marathon, then the death race. And what I realized was I was doing a lot of those things, and none of them were really for me, and none of them were really feeling very great and very aligned at the time. So I just kind of stepped back. I quit my job or took a leave from my work and said, I need to figure out what it is that lights me up again. I need to know what inspires me and how I can live a life that really feels good. And so for me, I just took that time and started digging into who I am, what matters to me. I started to play around with my top values, my key values, and I realized that, oh my goodness, no wonder I haven't been so happy in life, because who I am showing up as and who I really want to be weren't very aligned. And so I just made a shift, and I just made this commitment to myself to really start waking up each day and aligning with what mattered, and everything shifted, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is how it feels to wake up and be inspired again and feel really connected to, you know, your core of what's important and what matters. And you know, I had little kids, so I wanted to be this example to my kids, and I thought,
that's such a powerful motivator.
Yeah, but you know, you look at your kids and you think, I'm going to walk, you know, show them how to live life, and I'm going to be playing this game of whack-a-mole of like the next best thing, instead of going, you know, I'm at thing number 3, and I don't really even like thing number 3 or 2. Like I said to some people, you know, I would be at the death race, training for the death race, and saying, I don't even think I really like running. And so just to kind of go back and just say, what do I like? What do I love? And how can I show that example to my kids? So I would say, you know, what inspires me most is I know what it feels like to be really disconnected, misaligned with my values and what's important. And I know what it feels like today to be really aligned, and I know what it took to get there. And so I'm inspired every day just to stay in this place. It's not perfect, but, you know, it feels really good. And I think my other big inspirations are my kids. I want to show them that life isn't supposed to be messy and hard. It has moments of messiness, but it can be pretty awesome too. So.
Fantastic. Yeah. And so now with your business, Coach on the Go, can you share a little bit about what you're doing with that?
Yeah. So I, with my business, I mostly do public speaking and workshops. I would say, you know, my elevator speech for kind of what I do is I inspire people to live authentically, and I think it's pulling the pieces of, you know, identifying your values, facing your flaws, kind of looking at your whole story and owning your whole story, and not feeling like, oh, I have to orphan or kick under the carpet that part of my story and who I am. No, we got to own all of it, and every piece of the journey teaches us a lesson. So for me in my work, I'm so lucky because every evening I run a workshop where I'm in schools with kids, and I'm getting to show them, what if you connected with your values? What if you started to own all parts of your story? And so, yeah, that's where my work has me today.
Yeah, well, I love how you took your own personal experience and transformed it into how you're serving others. So it's fantastic. So you kind of mentioned what inspires you or your kids. Any other kind of resources that you can share that really open up that inspiration for you?
Yeah, for sure. I don't even know how many years ago now, probably 5 years ago, I started to watch TED Talks, and I happened to come across the TED Talk on vulnerability by Brene Brown. And I listened to it, watched it, and thought everything she's saying really speaks to me about being brave and choosing to live this imperfect life. And so I decided to, I read some of her books, and I kind of had this moment where I thought, I really want to meet her. Like, I got to meet Brene Brown. I got to go somewhere where she's speaking. And shortly thereafter, she posted that she was doing this workshop, curriculum based on her book, The Daring Greatly, and that it was called The Daring Way, and she was going to offer it, and you could go become certified in Texas. So I went, and I now teach The Daring Way and Rising Strong, and her books and her message about living with your whole heart have really impacted my life. And so I would say, resources, I'm always like, anything written by Brene Brown has had a huge impact on my life.
Yeah, I've read all of her work as well, and watched. Well, she's got a couple of TED Talks now, doesn't she? Yeah, and then a whole bunch of other resources. So.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing about her is she embraces this imperfect life too. She's not someone who's saying, I know it all and I've got it all figured out. She's saying, I struggle too. And I think that's the biggest piece about the work I do and why I'm so inspired when I watch her. It's saying we all have struggle. We all have flaws. We all have imperfections. And you're not alone. You have them, I have them, we all have them.
Yeah. Well, I think we're kind of in a time where people are disillusioned with the idea of a guru.
Yeah.
Somebody who's telling you how to do it, but not necessarily showing up authentically. The gurus don't show up authentically, but we kind of want to see that not so perfect, because then we relate.
Yeah. And that's the part about this, the work that I do, it's kind of addressing it as a practice, that none of this is about mastering it, saying, okay, I took the course, check, now I'm the expert. It's saying every day we have a choice to show up and be this person. And some days we're going to rock it, and some days we're going to suck at it, and that's okay, because, again, it goes back to my kids. I want my kids to see that I'm going to make mistakes, and I'm going to circle back, and I'm going to, right or wrong, or say, wasn't so great on that today, and just own it all. And I think that giving yourself permission that it is a practice, and there will be days, good days and bad days, and it's not about having it all figured out.
Right. Just show up.
Yeah, just show up. Exactly.
Yeah.
Totally.
So next question is what you personally do for self-care.
Yeah. So it's funny because I was thinking about self-care, and I thought, years ago I would try to wedge self-care into little parts of my life, which usually required getting up at 5 a.m. and trying to get something in the morning. Not my thing.
Right.
But today, self-care, for me, it's really important. I make it a priority because I know how good I feel when I'm taking care of me first. So self-care for me looks like workouts. I love yoga. I love to read. But one of the biggest parts probably for me about self-care is spending my time with people who are real and people who fill my soul. I think when I sit down and have a conversation with a friend and I walk away overflowing with that feeling of gratitude, there's nothing that is better self-care for me than that.
That fills you right up and take you through almost anything.
Yeah.
All right, so next question, what are you currently learning?
Oh my goodness, what am I currently learning? It feels like every day I'm learning something new. It's overload, but I love it. It kind of feels like all the pieces of what I'm learning just keep fitting together in the most beautiful way. I've been doing a lot of learning lately on forgiveness. Just a real interest for me about that there's a grieving process in forgiveness. And so I've been reading the book of Forgiving by Desmond Tutu, and it's really incredible read, just to say, we're the ones that put ourselves in the prison when we're not in a place of forgiveness. and that forgiveness comes with anger and hatred and other things, and that's okay. That you just need to grieve and let something die before you can move through it. And I think because I teach the Rising Strong process, which is, when you're face down in the dirt in a fall in your life and you're trying to get back up, a lot of times those falls have to do with needing to forgive either ourselves or someone else. And so to rumble with what does it mean truly to forgive, I think for me before I just thought, you have to kind of suck it up and be sorry, but it's not, or accept the apology. But it's really not so much about that. It's to be really sad for a little while and to grieve something that you really wanted, or some idea that you thought of something, and just to sort of process through it, realize that it's a process too, and that it doesn't just happen like that, that the grieving process takes some time, and that is a huge integral part of true forgiveness. So that's my big interest at this exact moment.
Well, it's interesting too, because a lot of people, or a lot of times I've known for myself, when I'm going through this act of forgiveness and I rush it, I start bringing up other experiences in my life because I haven't processed that are bringing up those same feelings of frustration or anger. So I'm just continually repeating the process until I actually go through the process of grief. And it's all of those stages. It's not just, okay, I've had a day, I'm good. You have to integrate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think that's everything we want right now is about fast, right? Let's get it over with. Let's grieve that quickly for a day. But we're all different, right? So there's going to be a different timeline for each of us in terms of how much true grieving we need to do. But I think it also gives you that real peace to say it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be sad in this forgiveness. It feels so much better for me to be sad than to be resentful and angry, and just kind of process it at the time frame that I need to.
Yeah. Just whatever works for you.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what is your favorite quote and why?
This one is so easy for me because I think I've had the same favorite quote for quite a few years, and it comes from Brene Brown, and it is, "Are you the adult you want your kids to grow up to be?" And I have it painted right outside my workshop space, and I remember hearing it years ago and having that kind of gut reaction of I don't know if I can answer yes to that. And it was a bit of a hard, because I was living that whack-a-mole kind of fast-paced, got to do this, got to run here, got to run there, instead of really being authentic and saying what feels really good. What do I want to say yes to today? What do I want to say no to? And so when I read that quote, it just stirred up so much in me, and it made me stop to say, and when I think of, are you the adult you want your kids to grow up to be, because I do a lot of work with youth, I'm not just thinking my own 2 kids. I'm thinking every kid that I'm privileged enough to work with, I want to be that example. I want to show them that owning your story is important, that it's awesome to be imperfect, that we're all imperfect, that we don't need to only show the world our highlight reel, that we need to share our struggles, and that true connection only happens when we're willing to be vulnerable and say, I struggle with that too, this is hard for me too. Because in that moment, we have that instant bond of I'm not alone, you felt that feeling too, or you've had that experience too. And so when I look at my kids each day, it just is like an instant trigger to say, show up today, show up and be all of you, at whatever that is today. Yeah. It might be awesome, it might be messy, it might be crazy, but it shows my kids that I'm real, and I think then it gives them permission to live the same kind of life. Be wholehearted, be all in, but that means making mistakes, having flaws, and being awesome all at the same time.
Learn. Actually take the time to make those mistakes and explore and learn.
Well, I work with youth so much right now, and there's such a struggle with perfectionism, I got to do perfect, I got to be perfect, I got to act perfect, I got to show the world my perfect, put only my best pictures up on my social media, act a certain way, and hide my flaws and hide my imperfections, and not let people see that. And that is an extremely exhausting hustle, and I could say that because I did that. And I'm sure many of us have experienced that of we feel we have to hide it because there's something connected to my flaws equal a sense of unworthiness. And I see that so much different today. And so when I'm talking to kids, I'm saying, let's embrace it all. Let's embrace the goods and the bads. And I had a really cool session the other night with some girls in one of my girls groups, and we kind of went around the circle like, what's something you love about yourself, a trait about yourself, or something about who you are, and we shared it. And then the second time around the circle, like, now let's share a flaw or something you struggle with. And in that moment, the connection you could feel in that room, I mean, I get goosebumps right now just thinking about it. But if we can just teach our kids that it's okay to not be perfect, man, we will have made a huge impact, I think.
Well, and in this age of social media, like you mentioned this, you know, there's a push for transparency. Like, you can see all aspects of people's lives, but we're kind of manufacturing still, and we're still putting up that front of, you're right, the best picture. How many pictures did you take to get to this one? And you're right, like, the people that I connect with the most, or that I respect the most, are the ones who put up their morning selfie, or totally messy hair. It just doesn't matter. Like, it's the truth that we connect with.
Totally.
So knowing that and owning it.
But as you know, again, back to that quote: "Are you the adult you want your kids to grow up to be?" We can manage we can read every parenting book. We can think we know, but our kids are learning by our example. So if they see us struggling with our own flaws and imperfections, they're learning that you have to hide that. And I think the best thing we can do is say, you know what, I screwed up today, or holy, am I ever having a hard time with this? And in that moment, they go, oh, so it's okay to not have it all figured out and be awesome all the time. No, it's not. That's not realistic.
Yes, exactly. Do what I do.
Yeah,
Not
exactly.
What I say.
Yeah, you could read all those parenting manuals in the world, but if you don't show up authentically and imperfectly, then the kids are going, just wait, that's not safe. You know, I can't show people that side, and I'm saying show people that side, because that's what connects us. Like you said, we are drawn to each other because of our willingness to be real.
Well, it's funny. I had a conversation recently with a friend regarding trust as a child, and I remember for myself, a lot of my kind of trust issues that I grew up with were very much rooted in the fact that I sensed things and I saw things happening in front of me that didn't align with what people were saying. You know, so you've got that empathetic heart or that nature, and I'm seeing something and I'm going, okay, well, why are you doing this? And it's almost like there's a disconnect between what somebody's saying and doing, and I just thought, I don't believe you. And so I went through my life really with kind of trust issues. But now coming to understand that was really just a fear that person held, or a disconnect that they haven't yet worked through or embraced.
Absolutely.
And so you're right, modeling it for your children, because I know I experienced it, not from my parents, but from other people, and now I very much model that for my children, because if I'm having a shitty day, I'll just say, you know what, I'm so sorry, I'm super grumpy, I need alone time, I love you very much, but I need to go read a book now. Like anything that just is totally my truth in that moment.
Yeah, and you know what's really cool, in the Daring Way work, Brene Brown uses the term circle back, and I love it. It's just saying, you know, when I have one of those bad moments, or maybe I lash out at you because my day's not been so great, or maybe I'm just struggling with my own stuff, that I say, you know, I recognize later, oh, I snapped at my kids this morning, and that was about my day. That had nothing to do with them. And I come back to them and say, hey, I need to circle back to this morning when, you know, you did this, and this is what I said to you. That was about me, and I'm really sorry. And I think right there, we're teaching our kids about imperfection. I made a mistake, you know, and I'm sorry, and I'm coming back to say, I want a second chance. I want to do a do-over. But imagine what we're teaching our kids in those moments when they go, okay, A, she apologized, which is pretty awesome. But B, she makes mistakes too. And she owns her mistakes instead of saying, like, you know, it's over, new day tomorrow. I'm not acknowledging that.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's a great example. Okay, so what is one thing that you've recently learned that if you could, you would share with absolutely everybody that you know?
Oh, I would say in part of the Rising Strong curriculum, there's a great piece about the power of the stories we make up, the stories we tell ourselves. And basically it's saying our brains are hardwired for story. And when something happens, when we have something in our life that doesn't turn out as we want, or we have a disagreement with someone, or kind of a feeling of ugh with someone around us, that our brain right away goes into self-protection mode. And so it will say, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, who's right, who's wrong, what's good, what's bad. And our brain will automatically create a story. And then it will chemically reward you for that story. But the sad part is, it rewards you whether the story's true or not. So you might have something happen, and right away your brain goes into this, this is why, he rolled his eyes at me when he was leaving a meeting. He did it because this, and we create this whole story in our head, and then we feel like, okay, I feel safer now because, I'm the good guy. But the sad part about that is you need to dig into that story, and I love this piece of the work because it says, face that story and ask yourself, what are the truths in it? And what are the pieces I'm making up? It uses the term confabulation, which is a lie told as truth, a lie told honestly.
Yeah. And
I think when you take a story and you go, what's the truth in this? You will realize very quickly that there's probably one or two pieces only of truth in that you have created.
Right. There was a person in front of me and he said something.
Yes.
Or you rolled his eyes.
Yes.
That's it.
But the rest of this huge story we have created, we have made up. And so you need to then kind of question those things. What assumptions am I making? What more do I need to know about the other person or about the situation? And quite often we'll find like there's a thread back to some of our own stuff, our own things that we're struggling with, rumbling with. And you also need to then be able to say, this is the story I'm making up. And now I need to be brave enough to go to that person and say, hey, when you rolled your eyes at me after that meeting, here's the story I made up about it. And quite often we realize that there's such a disconnect, but you see how quickly conflict happens with people. So you walk out of a meeting with me and I've just done a presentation and I say, that was a great meeting, hey, and you kind of huff and walk away. Right away, I'll go into self-protective mode of saying, she doesn't like me, she didn't like my presentation, maybe it was too long, she thinks this, and we create this whole story. And if I don't check that with you and say, hey, when you kind of huffed and walked away, I got this feeling, that you didn't like my presentation, that I did this. And at that moment you can say, oh no, actually the meeting was only supposed to go to 11:30 today and it's 11:45 and I had a chiropractor appointment at 11:45, so I was late. So I felt a little frazzled, leaving.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my goodness. So I've created this whole story that really had nothing to do with any conflict between us. But if I don't reality check that, when I see you later that day, I'm likely going to be cold toward you. And I might even turn away from you and just think like, she doesn't like me, so I'm not talking. And I'll tell you, when I first learned this part about the story, I thought, totally makes sense. But then I started to practice it in every little moment of that kind of feeling I had in my life. And it is so powerful to go, what are the facts? And what have I made up? And you write that on paper, and it's like a piece of paper you want to rip up fast after, because don't let anybody see that I was thinking this. But we all do it. We all go into, and our brain is just wired that way. So we go into the self-protective mode, but quite often it's really defeating to us because it moves us away from connection with people.
That's exact. I was just going to say disconnect. It creates disconnect. And I've found in my relationships that the greatest moments of intimacy are when you actually present your story and you offer, you kind of bury yourself there and you say, you know what, like, you said this and it kind of hurt me and I don't, like, why? Why did you say that? And they're like, whoa, no, that's not what I meant at all. And, like, this is actually what I meant. And then we learn about each other and we actually create these bonds and create connection rather than the disconnect.
Yeah. So, and when we're willing to do that, for me, it's all about being authentic at the end of the day. Like, I don't want to say something that's going to make me a bad guy. I don't want to be the mean person. I don't want to say something that moves me away from my authenticity. So in those moments when I take a breather and jot down that story and then have like the courage to say to the person, I just need to check something with you. When you did this, when you said that, it felt like this to me. And then they're like, no. Or maybe they'll say, yeah, and they'll give an explanation that will help us to make more sense of it. But when they're saying, no, it's actually, this chiropractor appointment. And then you're like, oh, because I may come back to a meeting later, or I may like leave you huffing in the hallway. And by the time I get down the hallway, I'm already saying to somebody, wow, she is not a very nice person.
Yeah.
You know, I might use
different
less
word.
nice words,
Yeah.
but I might say that, and none of that is who I want to be. So if I could just like breathe and get curious about what's happened and process through that part of the story, it's going to save us from a ton of conflict.
Oh, on both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you so much, Danielle. It was wonderful chatting with you today. And I'll post some information about how you can get a hold of Danielle in the video, so in the comments there. And yeah, wonderful. Thanks for joining us, and have a fantastic day.
Yeah.